Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the workshop session. I will call it to order. The first item will be discussion and updates related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Chief Smith. Great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anybody? Thank you, Chief. Second item is discussion and CO funding presentation by Jennifer Ritter, Specialized Public Finance. Thank you. Welcome to Lampasas. Excuse me, Jennifer. Becky, can her microphone be turned up or?
It would help if I turned it
Okay,
on.
great,
Thank
that's
you.
much better.
We'll start over again. So certificates of obligation, I apologize, are a debt instrument that allows you to pledge both your ad valorem taxes as well as utility revenues. They don't require an election like a general obligation bond. The nice thing about that is that the election dates are in May and November for bonds. The next election date that you would be even eligible for is not until November, so we couldn't sell until January of 2023 at the earliest if you had to call an election. And in this case, we aren't really talking about a lot of tax-supported projects to begin with, so it's not really appropriate to ask the voters to approve wastewater utility revenue bonds, for example. So the action before you tonight is to authorize the notice to discuss here a little bit later, and that's not a binding resolution. It does ask you to go ahead and provide that notice, but it doesn't require that you do what you say in the notice. You can actually come back and do less or not do it at all should you decide that you don't want to. But it is the first legal step in the process to being able to borrow. So that's the action that you have tonight. But again, you can make changes thereafter should you decide that you want to borrow less or not fund all the projects that you list out. So I think one thing here in the mind of everyone at the moment are interest rates. This chart that it's probably not terribly helpful, but this is a 10-year history of interest rates in the municipal bond market, which is our tax-exempt city, county, school district bond debt. On the left-hand side there are interest rates 10 years ago, and then on the far right-hand side are interest rates today. Visually, just looking at it, you can see that we're at a pretty low point in the bond market, but we have been trending upward. That far right-hand side you can see is a bit of a spike there. Since the beginning of the pandemic, interest rates came down pretty significantly, and they've been trending up since the beginning of the year, largely due to fears of inflation ongoing, as well as what's going to happen with the Federal Reserve when they start their getting rid of the bond buyback program that starts in March, and then tightening the interest rates that they're talking about starting out in March. Projections generally have interest rates rising between now and next year up to 1 to 1.25% year over year. So certainly you are in a position where if you're going to borrow, conventional wisdom is that this would be a good time to borrow and lock in rates now. This chart here shows, it doesn't actually have a little graph there, but that 80% of the time over the past 10 years, interest rates have been higher than they are today. So in today's market, where we're selling 20-year level, AA- City of Lampasas bonds, we'd probably be in the neighborhood of about 2.5%, somewhere in there in terms of interest rates. So when I say that interest rates have been rising since the start of the year, it's still relative. To say that we're selling below, hopefully, knock on wood, 3%, it's still a very good time for interest rates. Do you mind progressing to the next one? So the action tonight is to simply authorize that notice should you want to borrow certificates of obligation. You don't have to do anything tonight. If you didn't, it would delay it until your next meeting. We can come back and do it at the next meeting in terms of the notice. But the first action under state law is to authorize that notice. And then once the notice is authorized, we start the process of actually beginning the bond issuance itself. So we'll work with staff. Yvonne will have a lot of heavy lifting to do as well. You'll have to publish the notice in the newspaper, and your bond attorney, Bart Fowler with McCall, Parks, and Horton, is here. He'll handle that on your behalf. You have to run that notice 2 weeks in a row. And then during that time period, we'll be working on the official statement, which is the offering document. We'll work on that. We'll also work on the process of getting an updated bond rating from Standard & Poor's. We'll be doing all that between now and when you can sell. The earliest that you can sell with a CO is 46 days after you publish the first notice. So if you publish the first notice next week, for example, should you approve it tonight, we'll be in a position to come back at your April 25th meeting, and that's when we'll have bids in hand. We would envision doing what's called a competitive bond sale, where bidders from around the country come in and they bid, and whoever has the cheapest interest rate wins. So we'll come back to you should you decide to move forward on April 25th with the bids in hand, and that's when you would have the binding action. Should you decide you want to move forward or not accept the bids at that time, that would be the only action that would bind you to going forward. Assuming we have good bids on April 25th and you decide that you do want to move forward, we would have the funds closed and delivered to you on May 19th. So on the next slide here, and we can come back and take questions. The question is, though, how much could you afford? I realize that a lot of the amount that you're talking about tonight is for utility projects. That doesn't impact the tax rate. That's paid back through utility revenues. But if you did want to have some projects that were backed by taxes, be they streets, parks, whatever, What we looked at doing here was how much you could afford to borrow with your existing debt service tax rate, which is currently 647. So if we don't want to go up on the 647, how much can we borrow? We're a little bit of awkward timing here because certified values don't come in from the appraisal district until July, the end of July. We do get preliminary values in April, but it's not going to help us a lot before we sell. So we've had to assume growth in the tax base, which is how you set your tax rate. We're assuming 2.5% growth. I think looking around the community, 2.5% is probably very conservative going forward, but we've only assumed 2.5% so that we can hopefully be better than what you have here. So with a 2.5% increase in the tax base, and then going forward 2.5% for 10 years and then 0% thereafter, you can borrow $730,000. I think that's probably a little conservative. Again, if it were to be 3.5% or 4%, we start getting around the $1 million range of what you can afford to borrow. The next couple of slides here, I think we've got, thank you. For $2 million, you could borrow for just under a penny in tax rate. And then you kind of scroll through here, you don't even have to go forward. $4 million would be 2.5 pennies in an INS tax rate. And then if the entire $6 million plus were to be supported by the tax revenues, no utility revenue support whatsoever, that would be just under 5 pennies if it were entirely supported by it. Recognizing that, again, most of these projects are supported by utility rates and not the actual tax rate itself. But you do have, call it 750, maybe even up to $1 million of capacity in the tax rate itself. And I should mention that if you don't borrow to the tune of $750,000 to $1 million this year, you will have to lower that INS tax rate. So something to keep in mind as well. Not saying you don't want to lower it, but it's kind of nice to be able to know that you can get some projects done without any increase in the tax rate. So it's a pretty brief presentation. Happy to answer any questions, which I'm sure you have a few of them, and kind of see where we can go from there.
So the amount that we'd be asking for, is it your advice that we shoot higher because we can come down lower? Like
Yeah,
you can always
thank you.
go less, but you can't go up, right?
Thank you for prompting that. So the notice tonight essentially authorizes the maximum everything. So it's going to say all the projects that you may do, and it's also going to set a maximum amount that you can exceed. So let's say you do 6.3 million, which is what's currently in the draft notice. You can then decide, do you want to come back later and only do 6 million? We can do that, but we can't do 6.5 if we authorize a maximum not to exceed amount of 6.3. So, and we can't do more projects than what we put in that notice. We can do less, but not more. Okay. So everything tonight is the maximum, the most that you can do. So if there's still questions, given that we're a couple of months out from funding, I would suggest or recommend that you do a little bit more than what you might need, or perhaps put the wish list in tonight, and then the next couple of weeks, you come back and narrow that down. Okay. Because otherwise we have to start the process over to add it back, and that delays you another 46 days.
And we can just use generic definitions. We don't have to define each project to the point that we have to pave a certain street. We can just have road maintenance and things like that.
Yes, if it gets more technical, I'll bring Bart Fowler up. But,
okay.
But in general, the broad categories are acceptable.
Okay. That's what we've done in the past. I just want to make sure it hadn't changed.
Up. And okay. I think he would even recommend, I get to play lawyer for a second, but I think he'd even recommend that you probably don't list very narrow definitions, because then you have to spend money on those projects. Okay. So if you say roads and then something shifts, or you have a little bit of extra money left over, you're able to use it for any eligible road project. Right.
Any other questions? Herb? Kathy? Zach? Chuck? Bob? Randy? I think you've done a great job then.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so much. Next item up is discussion regarding comprehensive plan implementation.
Mayor and Council, this is a follow-up based on our February 7th meeting and then the reporting on February 14th. And under the general category of, we left some business unfinished at that meeting, and based on our conversation on the 14th, we felt like if we could at least come back and visit bites out of what was left on the table, that would give us a jump start for trying to get the rest of our business done. There were several items discussed on the 7th. and that I want to say we're not identified with the comprehensive plan, but they're complementary to the comprehensive plan. And again, I'm going to try to throw out a few of these items, and then I'm going to sit back and I'd like your input and direction on them. But the items that we discussed that maybe weren't specifically associated with the comprehensive plan list, but that we may want to tackle, our CCN and what is the developable area. How do we handle that? Some spade work is currently going on, particularly as we do the Western Pressure Plane study. We also discussed on the 7th, the hydrant inventory, and I think certainly within my report, we'll hear a little bit about some of the data collection and asset collection information that Ryan is taking on as part of an effort within his position. The other thing that we talked about that is also included on the comprehensive plan is the goals and actions required to address substandard buildings and their abatement. There were also a number of action items related to workforce and under the general topics of recruitment and retention. And then I think just to hopefully prime the pump on some of your comments, the high points from our comprehensive plan has included trails in the downtown area, what your desire is to improve or to work with some of our historic assets, the Historic Colored School, New Hope Baptist Church. We've kind of put those on hold for the time being, to more, broad planning efforts, Parks Master Plan, as well as new zoning, updating our zoning regulations. So those are all items within there. And I think the purpose of this item tonight is to get some additional feedback and discussion from council in terms of things that you think need to be at the top of the list and things that, everything, we want to do everything all at once, but what would you like staff efforts to be moving towards, particularly maybe in between now and our next planning meeting, which we've talked about being in April, and then after Jennifer has talked to you, I'm thinking, gosh, maybe we need to get one in and here this month sometime to go through this. But anyway, I'm just basically throwing this out to you for your input and direction, and be happy to hear and follow whatever direction you provide.
For myself, I would like us to take some short-term items that don't cost a whole lot of money, and let's get a few things done, I think you've called it the low-hanging fruit before. Yes, I know there's several people that are passionate about the trails, even from Brook Park over to Campbell Park, establishing a walking trail that would be safe with lights, whatever we need to make it so that the community can enjoy that. Like I say, I think if we take a few of those things that we can do quickly and inexpensively, as it were, I think we'd see some satisfaction from the community as well as ourselves that we're actually moving forward. I think we've got a few people interested in the Historic Colored School and the New Hope Baptist Church. Again, I'm not sure what the costs are off the top of my head, but those are things that we can, with volunteers, I think we can get people to respond to those as well as the walking trails around town. Randy?
Excuse me. I have a question on the walking trails. Are we going to try, by tying those together, to acquire land or like an easement?
A lot of them are already there. We could just expand.
Are we sure they're all connected?
I think we can find out.
I'm just going to reference the notes that we had, and within the action steps, and again, this is subject to council input, but our action steps for that effort would be to identify stakeholders, including downtown residents, park board, and interested businesses and property owners. So I think we'd want to engage property owners as part of that group that would help us identify the pathway. Following that, walking tour, trying to identify options and obstacles and possible resources, identifying transition areas. For example, how do we get across the creek? How do we make that connection to downtown? How do we make that connection to either Cooper Spring Park or Campbell Park? Or, is it an overland trail that we actually take people through downtown, and how do we identify that sort of urban trail? Seek funding options with Texas Parks and Wildlife, prepare the preliminary professional scope of service, and then procure, design, and implement project. But that's at least what I was thinking to get to your point. Yeah, we've got to engage property owners. And as well, that property is sometimes very, it's unclear in terms of ownership as well as the definition of those tracks. So we may have to be somewhat creative in the acquisition.
Would this take a meeting, like a joint meeting with the Parks Board? Or?
I think a lot of the tasks that we have indicate not only public engagement, but engagement as a collective city, whether it's council and park board, council and EDC, et cetera. So, yes, I think that's part of that initial identified stakeholders and try to get that group together.
Anyone else have ideas about what you'd like to see going forward?
One other thing as far as mine, I had questions in regards to being able to identify the fire hydrant. You said that's going on at this time?
I think you're going to hear me report tonight on the fact that the Assistant City Manager, Ryan Ward, is in the process of implementing a data collection system where not only fire hydrants, but certainly that would be one of the items that we would collect. We already have those mapped, but there's a hole between what was left off versus what we have. So we need to verify what we have as well as add to it what has happened in the last 10, 15 years.
And that may involve replacement of lines, so water lines as well.
Sure. If we have a gap in there, that could be compelling for a project to extend a line.
I think also maybe talking a little bit about raising some awareness towards like code enforcement and how the city works with businesses around town with helping them get their business up and running or trying to protect the rest of the citizens in this town or other businesses as well, structures. And then also kind of diving in more into what do we do with some of these older buildings in the downtown area that people aren't doing anything with? I mean, is there a way that we can help out, or do we need to be talking about, I mean, I hate to say it, but, condemnation and trying to build again kind of stuff?
And I think certainly what the comprehensive plan contains deals a lot with the downtown area and how do we create how do we make it the environment better for businesses, as well as how do we revitalize and create even more diverse hospitality uses downtown.
So perhaps we could go over the legalities of trying to condemn something. We've done it once, maybe twice in the last 20 years. Maybe new council would like to see the legal process that goes through.
And by no means am I saying let's go around, shutting everyone down and the heck with everything.
Sure.
But,
Let's hope.
no. But, I mean, if we got buildings sitting around that not getting any use and folks not around town owning them and trying to do anything with them, then, I mean, what's the point?
That was an item that was clearly identified through the comprehensive planning process.
Right. Anything else? Anybody's got anything near and dear to their heart?
I like some of the stuff in the comprehensive plan, and I don't think it would be expensive, is working on the establishing a buy local campaign and looking at the historic preservation and guidelines so that we can kind of keep the look without killing people and trying to rehab these old buildings that are around the square and stuff like that.
Do we still have a designated historic zone? It's still effective?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is that enough for you to start with, Finley?
Yes, ma'am. Again, we don't want to forget what we talked about on the 7th or what we left on the table for the 7th. So this is helpful as we prepare for our next workshop.
Which I guess is the next item. Discussion regarding the April council work session date, time, and agenda items.
Mayor and council, we'd originally talked about an April meeting date. I guess I'm feeling some urgency that we need to talk about projects as well as jump into some of the items that you've just referenced, and certainly would be open to a March or April meeting time at council's pleasure.
I'll just ask these guys, we're good? Anytime?
March.
Okay. So you guys pick a date in March, that would be good? A date and time?
Our council meeting is in March, same days as February, so the 14th and the 28th. That would leave the 21st open if you wanted to keep it on a Monday. But again, at council's pleasure.
Spring break. 21st works good for me.
21st? I think that'd be a good day. That way we're not so worn out before we get started on council. Are you good? March 21.
I think
I've got something on the
Councilmember Morris
21st,
is
but I
looking
can
at his
reschedule it.
calendar.
I have something on the 21st, but I can reschedule it.
Okay.
I'll make it work.
We think the 21st. 4 o'clock, like before? Does that work for everyone?
That's for me.
4 o'clock?
I can't do earlier.
4.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone the week before, so I'll be playing catch up that day.
Let's try 4 o'clock, and that way we can go as long as necessary if it
March
goes-
21st at 4 p.m. Thank you, council.
Next item is any discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Anybody need to speak to the agenda? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop session.
So
Move to
moved.
adjourn.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's take a 10-minute break. Is that good for you? Everyone, we're getting ready to call the session to order. If you'll just have a seat, please. I'll call to order the regular session, and Chief Bailey, for the last time, please.
You're going to make me cry. Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day and the blessings that go along with it. We thank you for the freedoms that we were able to experience today. Our prayers echo those that are around the world for the Ukraine. Father, we ask that you protect all that defend evil and that you provide safety and security to all around the world. Father, we ask that you watch over our meeting tonight and that you provide us with guidance and with wisdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We have next presentations and proclamations, and we have the swearing in of Officer Shad Curtis.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Good evening.
I'd like to take a minute of your time to introduce our newest patrol officer, Chad Curtis. Chad Curtis started with us on January 31st. He's currently in our field training program. A little bit about Chad. We're really excited and lucky to have Chad. Chad comes to us after being honorably retired with Houston PD of 22 years. Prior to that, served in the United States Army. Chad, with Chad here tonight is his wife, Ginger. Chad and Ginger have purchased property out here, and this is their forever retirement home. So we're excited to have them here. Judge Goodell, would you please swear Chad in?
Welcome to Lampasas.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Chuck. Chuck, you might as well stay here. Next, we have Chuck Montgomery, 20-year service recognition. Next items, we have public hearings, citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. There are no comments. 1.2, citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included on the agenda may do so at this time. No one there either? 1.3, public hearing to receive citizen comments regarding a request for a specific use permit for property described as Lot 20-A, Block 3, replat of lots 20 and 21, Diamond Ridge, 0.856 acres, commonly known as 1900 Grand Canyon, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County, to allow for a garage apartment, accessory structure, guest quarters in an area zoned single-family residential SF10.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Burkowski has gone through the Planning Commission and Council and asking for a guest quarters, if you will. He is building a 1,300 square foot garage, and inside that garage, he wants to have a 281 square foot guest quarters. It will be equipped with a living space, a bathroom, and like a little kitchen. I would say like a wet bar. It'll just have like a sink and like a little mini fridge. So it will not have a kitchen per se. And like I stated, it's in the garage that'll house his RV, his golf cart, his bikes will be in there, and then this little area will be there. It's just strictly for guest quarters, overnight stay of a guest, possibly a pool house in the future, but it's very small. I did mail out 18 letters to property owners within 200-foot radius. 3 of those came back in favor of the request. 1 of them came back in protest. That is in your packet. I also sent you the planning and zoning packet a few weeks ago because my actual planning meeting was held on February 10th. Okay. So with the 3 letters that were received and the 1 in protest, you'd also notice in your packet when I sent to you for the Planning Commission that there was 1 from Mr. McLean, who had served on the Planning Commission board in the past, and he was concerned about having the guest quarters in this neighborhood. He lives in proximity. He lives over on Teton, and he didn't feel it would be a good fit. He was worried about it being rented out. So my planning commission, when they met, it was ended in a tie vote, if you will. We had 3 that were in favor. We had 3 that were in opposition. So with that being said, I went ahead and considered it a denial, asked Mr. Bukowski to send me a letter of appeal, which allows it to go directly to you instead of going back through the planning commission. So that is where we are this evening. Also within the agenda cover, you'll also see, in relation to the comp plan, something that we have identified in the comprehensive plan, that we always try to relate our land use decisions with our comprehensive plan, so we make sure that they're in line properly. It does encourage life cycle housing, which is basically what this is. And just to give you a little background, I went ahead and looked from 2018 to 2022, we have issued 5 specific use permits for accessory dwellings. And then we also, since 2000, which the zoning regs were approved or adopted, if you will, back in 1999. I'm not sure if it was the SUPs were effective in 1999 or after, but I know that since 2000 up until date, we've done 65 specific use permits for various reasons.
Right.
I think that's it.
Are there any citizen comments? Anyone wishing to address this? Council have any questions?
I move to approve the first reading of the ordinance for a specific.
We're in the public hearing at this
I
point.
just had one,
Yes, sir.
and the handout that you gave us answered my question. It's
Oh,
a
did it?
5 and 12 pitch, and it's 22 feet, which is no more than a 2-story. So I'm good
No,
with
and
that.
they're actually working on the actual, if you will, the floor plan of it. They're going to actually make some modifications to it, so it'll be a little shorter than what it is there anyway, but they want to make sure that it does encompass their RV, which is our main concern.
5 and 12 is a standard
Yeah.
roof pitch, so that's
Everything's
not
been
high at all.
identified.
That's no more than a 2-story was what I was making
sir.
sure of, so that it didn't stick up.
Right.
And
And
this
it'll
is-
have the same facade, and it'll look exactly like the house currently that is there.
Right. I
It's all
saw
going to
that
be
it-
mirrored, yes.
Stone and.
And this isn't for like rental or anything like that?
No, sir, the way that our zoning regs are actually written, and it can't be for commercial or rental property, and you would never be able to rent out the guest quarters because it doesn't have a kitchen in there, so it wouldn't do anybody any use for that.
Was that one of the issues with neighbor comments?
A few of them were, Mr. McLean, he does have a homeowners association where he lives over on Teton, which was outside my 200-foot radius, but he was concerned because of the potential for it to be rental property, but it's not set up that way. There's no way that he could rent this portion of his property, nor would he want to. It's got one drive, it's just part of his garage. He's just doing it this way for his own pleasure.
Any other comments? Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Next item up is discussion and possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on February 14, 2022.
I didn't see any corrections. Recommend approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 4.0, boards and department reports. We have the secretary monthly report.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. If you have any questions along the way, I'll wait until the end, but I'll just go through it really quickly with you. So this right here is just going to be the department duties. Right now, we have myself as the city secretary and the zoning administrator. And as of July, we have Lupe Charping, who is actually the administrative secretary and permit technician. This kind of provides you an overview of our duties. So we do the open records request. During this 12-month period, we've done a little over 50 that we've actually facilitated or completed on our own accord. Records retention and management, the code of ordinances and the codification. And the codification piece is to getting them on the code of ordinances. So once they're approved and adopted by y'all, I have a system where I go in, send them up to MuniCode, and get them actually codified to be added to our code of ordinances in our website. Resolutions that I take care of, anything that is approved through y'all, we keep it on our records retention schedule. We keep it on our vault. Annexations, we have done 2 during this time period. any petitions that come through, building permits and project facilitation, so we kind of help get the ball rolling, set up meetings accordingly, whatever we need to do to facilitate the project. Waste Connections, we continue on an ongoing basis, have a good working relationship with them and communicate with them daily. They communicate with us regarding their service. We communicate with them regarding any service mishaps or anything that we feel that needs to be corrected. So we stay in close contact with them. Planning and Zoning, the Zoning Board of Adjustments, those are two of my boards. Capital Improvement Program, the CIP packets we put together. Elections, of course, is what we're going through right now. Texas Municipal League, the TML, the city insurance and inventory side. So anytime we get new equipment or a new building, it's my responsibility to make sure it gets a TML so it's covered under our insurance. And we do an annual review of all of our assets to make sure that it does coordinate with what TML has. And then if we need to do any modifications or updates, we do at that time. Contracts and agreements, council packets, the LEDC packets, budget books. Loopy did really well this year. She put together a couple of them that we needed for inside City Hall and for some of the directors. Cemetery deeds, we do those. And then to maintain the vehicle registration, so we rely on staff to go and do their inspections. They bring the inspections back to us. We go up to the county and we get all the registration for the vehicles. And we set up the new vehicles as well. And then My Government Online, this is our new permitting process. This is basically it's a work in progress. We've been doing it for a little over a year now. There are still a few hiccups that we're working through, making it better, streamlining processes. I pretty much kind of delegated this to Loopy so that she can learn and understand this process, get training that we need, get updates needed. So she's enjoying that piece of it. Administrative support, our teams of myself and Loopy, we support the following boards, commissions, and groups. Of course, City Council, LEDC, Construction Board, Zoning Board of Adjustments, Planning Commission. The Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee is no longer in effect per se because we've adopted the comp plan, but during this time period we did facilitate and help with that process. Development team meetings, this is something we do internally, kind of get all the staff together and kind of talk about the projects that are coming, the development, where they are, what progress is being made, just so we can kind of stay together and stay on top of everything going on within the city. The pre-development and construction meetings, I try to facilitate any pre-development meetings, so if a contractor or a developer comes in and they want to do a project, I first send out for utilities to see what's available. Then I'll schedule some time to where we can all get together. So normally it's with our staff internally, and then with the contractors they want to bring, we'll kind of talk about anything that we can kind of adverse and kind of head off at the beginning before it gets too far involved. And then we'll have a pre-construction meeting where we'll actually talk about what to expect out in the field with inspections and the process going forward. So roughly, we've probably done a lot more, but I could actually count 15. So we've attended created packets and or took minutes for 58 meetings this year. For planning and zoning, I've held 5 meetings this year, 9 public hearings. I've sent out 126 certified letters, 3 rezone requests, 5 plat approvals, and 5 specific use permits. So my administrative assistant permit technician is Loopy Charping. Again, she started in July of 2021. She did receive her permit technician certification in November. The admin secretary wears a multitude of hats and supports many areas. The primary responsibility of this position is to greet customers, handle customer inquiries, both in person and on the phone. She's an asset to the city manager, city secretary, and building official. The following is a modest list of the duties that she does. She facilitates the vehicle inspection registration process. So far, she's done about 50 vehicles over the last 6 months or so. Completed and filed over 25 cemetery deeds. Completed department purchase orders. Prepared budget books. She's cross-training in the agenda, the minute, and the packet process with myself. She issues the building permits and schedules the inspections. And then she's the lead in facilitating the training and tools for My Government Online. So building department support, where the building department doesn't fall under the city secretary or the administrative department itself, we still support that area. So we issue all the permits, whether it's through MyGov, whether it's through our website, or through somebody walking into City Hall. We've done a really good job, at least Loopy has, over the last few months, trying to get everybody directed to the website so they can get them the My Government account and start doing it that way so we can start facilitating it, because if they don't do it on MyGov, I can't request inspections through MyGov. So we're still doing some paper stuff, online stuff, and then phone, or text with Frank. So we're trying to get it more streamlined. So for 2021, we did 740 building permits, which is about 3 a day. For this current year, we did 779 so far, and that averages about 4 per day. And this is encompassed to both methods, whether they came in, did it online, website, or on MyGov. So part of our process when somebody comes in, we're educating all the time. I mean, the homeowners will come in, the contractors will come in, they ask for licensing information, what do we need? Does a GC require a license? Is it just my trades? What kind of insurance do you need? What do I need to do for my setbacks? So we're in constant go mode. Somebody walks in, we drop what we're doing, and we help them and we assist them with whatever we need to do to facilitate that project. So a lot of it goes through the utility part, where it's kind of like the first thing that I do is okay, let's see what's available to you. Let's see what kind of water you have. Do we have sewer? Do we have electric? Let's get that routed first, see what any cost it might occur outside just the regular tap fees or water fees. Is there any extension of services? Do we need to set an extra pole out there? And then we'll come back, and that's where we kind of start the building process for a new build or even an upgrade build. So of course, zoning is a big thing too. We want to make sure anybody that comes into the city that they're zoned properly. So whatever they're looking at, if it's outside the city limits or if it's inside the city limits, and what the zoning is it a good use for what they want to do? We have to make sure it's compatible. So again, facilitated about 15 or so plus the pre-con and development meetings thus far. This is just a list of training that I've been very fortunate to be able to attend. I've done the code enforcement training, land use training, virtual municipal fundamentals, the Texas Municipal Certification Program, professional development seminar, the legislative updates, TML annual conference. I attended an LADC symposium webinar with Mandy, Advanced Institute seminar, election law seminar, and then, of course, Luby did her permit tech seminar. And then, of course, I updated that lovely little city council orientation handbook y'all have. And that sums it up. Short, sweet, to the point. Y'all have any questions?
I wanted to ask about the waste management.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that clearing up a little bit? Is it getting better with the trash pickup?
To be honest, we have lots of hiccups. We have good days. We have bad weeks. It just kind of depends. Like right now, for example, I'll give you a great example. One of my main drivers that does the commercial route, he fell off one of his trucks and he broke his clavicle bone, I think, somewhere up there. So he can't work right now. So we have a relief driver that's helping his route, and then we have another driver that is used to the area, but they've got to get it in sync of what they're supporting other cities. So like Monday, I normally have 2 drivers. Today, I only had 1 driver. So it's kind of hit and miss on my good days and bad days. I try really hard to stay in constant communication with them. I text them all the time. We email back and forth. I tell them, even when they're here on the weekends, I'm like, let me know when you're done. Let me know if you have any problems, any issues. They'll text me when there's a car parked in front of the dumpster. I'm like, okay, I'll call them. Let me get it moved so you can go back over there and service them. Because I don't want anybody to be delayed. Right. I don't want any, holdups, because just like today. So today we were off by a day because even though I only had 1 driver and I'll have 2 tomorrow, we're still going to be playing catch up for those that weren't serviced today. Right. So it's a constant vicious cycle that I'm trying to alleviate. Anyway, it's a work in progress, constant communication. I applaud y'all. If y'all get any, complaints or anything about it, send them to me. I will direct them to where they need to go, and I will help them and assist them.
So our main driver breaking his clavicle has been part of the problem with the pickup on the dumpsters, the commercial dumpsters?
Well, no, that's not part of the problem. Not just today. I mean, he was out for a few days, but we have 2 drivers that know our city. But Monday, I always had 2 drivers, with one of my drivers being out, being ill. I only had 1 driver today. So tomorrow, I'll have 2 drivers. But like I have Brandon, he's my relief driver, if you will. He knows the route. He comes in and does Saturday work. He does, the double work sometimes. But he's not my main driver. So if my main driver, maybe Brandon's filling in for, but Brandon has another city he has to take care of, I'm not going to get him because he's not my primary. Mm-hmm. So we're just kind of rotating out the drivers. But they know how I feel. They know what responsibilities are. Convenience stores, the restaurants, the schools, they all get top priority. Any businesses, because I don't want them to have any problems and I don't want them to affect their business. So we're working on it.
Good.
How are we doing with our regular city dumpsters? And are we having any problems with them as far as still getting outside people filling them up?
The last time I talked to Chris, we pulled, I think as council has been made aware, we pulled about 6 dumpsters out of our parks system, and we figured out that we were only using about 3 of them. And I think I've, relayed my story about my old schoolmate that lives in Evant, and he told me the day that they were pulled out of our parks. He said, "What'd you do? What'd you pull the dumpsters out of your park?" Well, it's, people from outside the city coming in to use them, but like yourself. But anyway, so the impact has been, we don't really need 6 dumpsters in our parks based on the park trash. It was a community county and even outside of the county source for dumping their trash. No, not as far as I'm aware.
No.
Because they're no longer out in the parks now. I think there's still some business dumpsters that may be used by folks, but we have put stickers, or are in the process of putting stickers on all those that basically saying, sit in your dumpster, don't dump in it.
Yes, a few months ago, I had requested from Waste Connections to provide me with stickers, and I have gotten about 100 so far, and we needed 200. So I broke them up into groups, and I've had some of my guys go out and go put them on the dumpsters for me. So we're about halfway through with 100, so we probably have another 50 left, and I'm waiting on the extra order of the 100. But as far as the extra dumpsters, those dumpsters are being held in the water wastewater department right now in the plant, so they're fenced off so they can't get access to them. However, they're still at our disposal, so like when we do have events, if we have tournaments, if we have activities coming in the city, we can still put them back for us to use, and that way we haven't lost anything. But the guys just go and use our facility there to dump our trash there.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Next item is city manager's operational report.
Just a few brief comments, Mayor and Council. The memo is included in your packet. Just wanted to follow up on your action of February 14th in support of the business park water and sewer and roadway drainage project. That was formally awarded on February 16th by the LEDC, including ad alternate 1. Just to kind of give you an idea of the timeline, the contractor has been officially notified of the award. They're in the process of supplying us all of their insurance and bonding information. Once we receive that, we will execute the contract. Once the contract is executed, we'll set up a pre-construction meeting, which will hopefully follow up with a notice to proceed. Certainly the timing, the start time for that project will be discussed in the pre-construction conference. As a reminder, that contract is 365 days, and we certainly anticipate, with no hiccups, a notice to proceed being issued for the next 30 to 60 days. That's typically about how long it takes to get everything squared away and get the meeting set up. Skate Park, we had a good meeting on February 22nd. It was attended by about 30 individuals who provided input on the scope, budget, as well as the desired design feature. You do have some attachments included in your packet of some of the items that went that were gone over by representatives from SPA and New Line Skate Parks. There will be a follow-up design meeting to kind of refine what the final product will look like and gain additional insight from the community. That I think Chris Eicher would like that meeting to be in person, but it at least was scheduled tentatively virtually, but we'll certainly provide that date to council when that is firmed up. CIP is, I think some of you may know, it was due to poor weather on the 24th. We moved that to March 3rd. And just as a reminder, we will recap the projects that have been initiated and funded by council, as well as a review of possible new projects for inclusion in the 23-28 report. Planning Commission, we wanted to, I believe you have resignation at your seat at the dais, so we did want to let you know that Mr. Jeff Jackson has resigned from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and council will likely or possibly take a look at a recommendation from the Planning Commission for an appointment at the March 14th meeting. 3rd Street, I think even with some weather delays, and I think this is probably accurate, I think the contractor is still slightly ahead of their contracted schedule. They have been spending their time last week forming, and actually they did some forming today, and I think they plan on pouring sometime this week. The change orders have been discussed and approved with the contractor and will be incorporated in with what they're currently doing on the flat work. Ryan, is that? Okay. Fort Hood, just wanted to remind you that we have not firmed up a date for the tour of Fort Hood. That's something that was kind of initiated by Clay Harrington, who is Lampasas representative to the Heart of Texas Defense Alliance. We shot them some dates, March 9th, 29th, and then April 6th through the 8th that we would prefer. At the same time, we also said, hey, whatever day works best for most of the people, we'll go with it. Unfortunately, it's hard to coordinate all of the county officials and county offices with city council and some city staff, so we'll certainly do the best that we can. Something I referenced previously, Assistant Manager Ward has been working on implementing a data collection and mapping to coincide with what we currently have on our website, a cloud-based GIS program. And we'll be spending some time taking a look at not only the equipment, but also some training needs that our staff has. We think that this will be a great addition in terms of not only locating and mapping the condition of our assets, but seeing where we have gaps between what we currently have mapped and what's on the ground. But Ryan, did you want to say anything else about that?
Mayor, Council, this is one of the pieces that I've worked with different teams over the years is GPS, asset collection, data management. So I'm actually really excited about this. We do, as Manager DeGraffenreid mentioned, we do have a GIS system. There's certain data that's in there. Fire hydrants for one. We have some utilities in there. Of course, our road center line that 911 manages for us at the COG. But we're wanting to add to that and make sure that what we're out there collecting is accurate. We do have a Trimble device that we use to go do the data collection. I've been working on that a little bit just to make sure it's up to date. IT's been instrumental in getting us to the point where we've got the software uploaded. It's functioning now. There may be a point where we come back to council and ask for some other GPS equipment. There's some other alternatives out there, but working with our rep that handles all of our GIS data. He's out of Marble Falls, the Marble Falls area. We've sat down with him. He's actually updated in the last week a lot of the different layers out there, kind of getting us up to speed with what, as far as the roads, how many miles we have a road, all those things that, you know, GIS helps us kind of manage. But the asset piece is really critical, so I'll be working with all the teams, as the manager mentioned, to try to start collecting those assets so we have a real idea of what we have out there.
Thank you, Ryan.
As the mayor pointed out, Chief Bailey will be retiring. Please take some time on Friday to come by and wish her well. Be from 2 to 4 at the Calvert Municipal Building, and certainly going to miss Sammy. CPA, Chief Bailey reports that 6 individuals have completed and graduated from the current Citizens Police Academy series of classes. A program started by her in 2017 has graduated approximately 30 participants, many of whom have gone on to help us at special events, and you've seen them out there behind traffic barricades wearing their jackets. So great program, and we know that will continue with whoever takes the lead on it. Also like to recognize the following employees who began their career with the City of Lampasas in February. Felicia Vallejo, 10 years. Bessie White, 7 years. Corey Griner, 8 years. Carolyn Heiss, 4 years. Chuck Montgomery, 20 years. Mandy Walsh, 5 years. Carlos Garcia, 18 years. And then just a couple of very quick items. I think you may have noticed that we pushed out some information about the ENCODE migration, so we will be, if you hear something from the public that say, hey, I couldn't get my payment in March 2nd in the morning, we'll be basically shutting that part of our system down for just a few hours. And also last night, we did receive the structural plan set for the hostess house, so we will be reviewing that. Antonio was good to his word, said he would have it to us by the end of February, so we'll be reviewing those this week. And then finally, just to let you know, I have included the Heart of Texas Defense Alliance report is included in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. Just briefly, I did have a few comments, and without making Sammy cry, I just want to express how honored I've been to work with you these past 10, 15 years, however long it's been. Thank you for your service. A big hole will be left, but thank you so much.
Mayor, Council, I want to say thank you to you as well. It's been my privilege to serve for the city of Lampasas and for our community. Thank you.
And you're not going anywhere, right?
No.
Thanks. I did have a few other comments. Our city's getting busier and busier. We've got builders and developers and people moving in from all over the country, Austin, California, all sorts of places. I just wanted to let our staff know, particularly the building official, the economic development director, and our city secretary, that I appreciate the hours and the commitment, the time you've made for these people that are coming in with their request. They're talking about what they need, their concept for what they want to do in our city, or else they just want to talk. We have a lot of that, I'm sure. We'd be hard-pressed to find another community, whether it's larger or smaller, that could issue a permit on site, show up to a pre-development conference on one-day notice, or have staff drop what they're doing to conduct an inspection or meet with a contractor. Based on our level of commitment and our growth, we may also need to visit, and I've brought this up before, we'll probably have to be talking about additional staff to keep carrying out these duties as well as we've been doing. And I can't thank you all enough, not just you all, but all of the city staff for everything you do for our community. It's much appreciated. Next item is unfinished business. We have none. New business, 7.1, discussion and possible action regarding extending fiber to the city library by utilizing American Recovery Act funds.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The purpose of this project is to connect the public library to our existing city fiber network. The library has been identified for several years as a continuance of our overall phase city fiber project. The vendor that staff is recommending has been used on all of our phase fiber projects throughout the city. Included in your packet is the proposal, a map of city facilities on our existing fiber network, as well as a map with the fiber path to the library on city-owned poles. With the American Recovery Act funds available to us, staff is seeking a motion to consider and approve award of quote to Southwest Fiber Optics in the amount of $12,338.50.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion items? Anyone want to speak?
Monica, quick question. Will this get rid of those hotspot things that they...
No, that is something separate that the Library Foundation does in regards to renting that out to patrons.
Anything else? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
7.1, discussion and possible action regarding the approval of funding for the new city library sign.
Mayor and Council, this is a request basically buying through the library and the Library Foundation for the identifying signage on the east face of the library. Originally, when that library was built, of course, the east side looked at the back door of, what, 2 duplexes, or at least 1 or 2 houses right there. The front side and I believe the north side had some identifying signage on it. Foundation felt like, and the library staff felt like, it was important to have that identifying signage on the east side as well, because that has basically become their main entrance. The cost of that was about $5,200 for the raised aluminum lettering signage, and we're seeking a motion to approve that cost.
I'd consider a motion to approve the funding.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any comments? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Finley. 7.3, discussion and possible action regarding U.S. Highway 281 project, redesigning a portion of Highway 281 as U.S. 281 business by resolution.
Mayor and Council, this was discussed on the 14th as a report item, and it's something that has also been discussed, albeit over a period of several years at public meetings. The primary change that we will see is the roadway from basically the Hostess House across the bridge to Key Avenue, which is the current 281, is now going to be changed to Business 281. There are some other kind of non-substantive changes to the routing. 190 will now take a right turn at Key and continue north, as opposed to going ending into 281 by the Hostess House. And council is asked to consider the attached resolution.
Move to approve the resolution in support of the TxDOT improvement to US 281 and resulting reclassification and redesignation of certain highway segments in the city of Lampasas.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions?
I have one question. This would only take effect if they go through with the project.
Correct.
Anyone else? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? .4, discussion and possible action regarding CO funding approval by resolution as presented by Jennifer Ritter, Specialized Public Finance.
Mayor and Council, this was discussed in workshop session, and I believe bond counsel and your financial advisor are still in attendance if you would have any questions.
Move to approve a resolution that authorizes proceeding with issuance of certificates of obligation not to exceed $6.5 million to go towards listed items in the notice, as well as public safety and park expansion and improvements, and further directing the publication of notice of intention to issue City of Lampasas, Texas, combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2020.
Second.
A motion and a second. Thank you. Any questions?
6.5 agreeable to everybody?
6.5.
I mean, if we can always come down, but at least that gets us where we talked about.
Right.
Right, not. Okay, have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 7.5, discussion and possible action to approve, deny, or approve modifications to the first reading of an ordinance for a specific use permit for property described as Lot 20A, Block 3, replat of lots 20 and 21, Diamond Ridge, .856 acres, commonly known as 1900 Grand Canyon, Lampasas, Texas, Lampasas County, to allow for a garage apartment, accessory structure, guest quarters, in an area zoned single-family residential SF10.
Mayor and Council, this item was discussed during public hearing, and at this time, I'm asking you for the approval of the first reading of the ordinance to approve, deny, or approve of modifications for the specific use permit to allow his guest quarters.
Move to approve the first reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions?
I did have one small comment that I missed earlier, or wasn't able to say earlier. One of the people that didn't want to do this, one of their concerns was that it was too close to the property line, but in looking at the maps, it didn't look like that was part of it, and it was
That is
following the
correct.
rules of the setback.
Yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
just wanted to
It's-
make sure.
Just so you know, it's a 25-foot front yard setback. We have 6 on each side and 6 in the rear. And the way that the initial footprint of this garage was had a 12-foot setback on the side.
Okay,
It might change a little bit, but it still will conform with our zoning regs.
okay, thank you.
I would like to, if you would consider adding as submitted to the drawings, so that in case he changes design, it would come back to us?
Change
The design of the structure?
You want to see another plan review?
No. I said if this would be approved according to the design presented.
Okay, but like we discussed during public hearing, that there is going to be modifications to the plan made. So are you asking to see the plan review?
Are there
Again?
anything substantial?
No, sir. It's just going to change a little bit of the height, and I think he's going to make some modifications, but very minimal to what you've seen
Will
that
the
I have
height
your
go
dais.
down?
Just one moment.
Mayor, council, thank you. The only change that we possibly would make would be to lower the wall height of the structure. The plan currently calls for 14 foot. My wife and I just felt like that was a little taller than we needed. Our contractor indicated that he could lower that and still have enough height to put my small travel trailer in. So
Okay.
that would be the only change we would make to the structure,
Okay,
if we did.
sure, okay.
Okay. Got a motion and a second, everyone comfortable?
Yep.
I'll call all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Lampasas. 7.6, discussion and possible action to declare a 2011 Ford passenger van as surplus and allow staff to dispose of it as state law allows.
Good evening, council. It is me again. So the 2011 Ford passenger van had been utilized by the Gatesville Correctional Facility, and what we had engaged in basically an agreement with them where they would bring the girls into the community, they would do some community work, and they would go back to Gatesville. And this went on for many years. In 2019, when the pandemic hit, they kind of halted all those services. And so recently, we've talked to the warden, and they've decided they're not going to do the program any longer. So they were using the van to transport the females, and now they're no longer needed. And we don't have a need for a 15-seater passenger van at the city. So we're just asking that we go ahead and be able to deem it as surplus and allow us to dispose of it as state law allows.
Move to declare the 2011 Ford passenger van as surplus and allow staff to dispose of it as state law allows.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments, questions?
Does that just get auctioned off on like one of those government websites?
Typically, that has been what I do, is I put them on GovDeals to auction them off. Sometimes we might have a low bid, which we'll probably do on this one because it's very in good standard condition. It's only got like 36,000 miles on it, and it's in good, like I said, it's been maintained really well over the years. So we'll probably put a threshold on there. But typically, yes, that's where I put most of the vehicles, is on GovDeals.
And I'm just curious, can you sell those besides an auction? Can they just be listed?
There are certain requirements we have to be met through the state code and the laws that we have to abide by. I think it has to be an auction of some sort that we can do. So,
It has to be competitively offered.
Gotcha.
Anything else? Let's hope. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks.
thank you.
7.7, discuss and consider approval of events and allocation of public safety resources for the 2022 special community events.
Mayor, Council, we have identified 22 events in 2022, just by coincidence, that are reoccurring events that we assist with safety annually, and we are seeking your approval tonight for those 22 events to occur in the city of Lampasas with our assistance.
And as one of those events, I want to thank you all for everything you do for all of the nonprofits in the community.
Thank you.
Invaluable. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you,
Thank you.
Chief. 7.8, discussion and possible action regarding the remaining lease balloon sum of $73,500 for the purchase of an expiring equipment lease with Holt Cat, specifically for a Cat D5 Dozier, D5K 2XL, with a lease expiration date of March 29, 2022.
Mayor, Council, thank you again. This is an item, and I'll give you a quick background on this. This one was as you mentioned, a dozer. We use this for clearing brush. We use this for our landfill, on occasion for roads, but the majority of the use is for those main items. This lease was entered into on March 30th of 2017. It will be expiring March 29th of 2020 with a residual balloon payment, if council so chooses, for $73,500 and no cents. Based on the low hours, we've been working with Holt Cat, who the lease is with, out of Waco. This piece of equipment currently has 716 hours, so it's still in really good shape. I've done some various background analytics on some different types of equipment. I'm familiar with quite a bit of the heavy equipment, and the dozers and backhoes with low hours at the end of a lease sometimes make sense to purchase, depending on the use and how well it's used and what kind of maintenance has been done. This has been maintained well, and this one is actually one of those where we would save. We had budgeted for this unit through the rest of the year. There would be a savings of $9,964.20 that could offset that $73,500. Currently, there is a high demand for heavy equipment. I'm sure, as everyone is familiar with, whether that's fleet vehicles or heavy equipment in this instance. I did speak with the rep to replace this or to continue into a new lease and sign a new contract. The delay is probably 12 to 15 months to get that piece of equipment. So if we were to choose not to, purchase, then we would be giving that back to CAT. I think the street value for this piece of equipment, or if it went to auction, would be about $125,000. And while you can tell the hours are low, when it's needed, it's needed. It's one of those types of piece of equipment, but it's not used every day. And I'll stand for any questions.
I would move to approve the purchase of the Cat D5 dozer in the amount of $73,500 and authorize the city manager to execute the documents.
Second. Oh, go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or concerns?
Does it get used pretty often?
It gets used, I would say, a couple times a week at the landfill, and then as we do projects in the summer, if we're doing road projects, we do assist. A lot of times roads will assist our electric group, so Flint's team, when they need brush clearing to put new poles in. It's a piece of equipment that's really just used for pushing and moving stuff around, not quite like some of the other pieces of equipment we have that, that are a little more useful in various scenarios. This pretty much has one job. So,
Do we hire somebody to move it, or have we got a piece of trailer now that can move it?
We do have a flatbed that can move it, since it's a, you know, D5, it's not the size of like a D10 or
I
a
was
large
thinking we
dozer.
bought a trailer.
Right, we do.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir. That concludes our program for this afternoon. I would get an adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.